Assalamu alaikum, doctor. My
Walaikum
name is
salam.
Aisha, and I have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-month-old.
Inshallah.
My question is, do you have any input on raising third culture kids? How to navigate and strike a balance between like two different cultures, religions, two different countries from both parental backgrounds. I'm thinking more of like a Muslim first identity, but even that comes with a lot of cultural baggage and identity politics. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the new world question now, right? That's so the third culture child. Is everybody familiar with that term, the third culture? In other words, traditionally it used to be like you come from a certain culture or ethnic background, and you learn how to identify with that. It gives you a source of strength, your heritage, your background. Even if your family immigrates to another country, you still know what your roots are, and that's kind of your cultural roots and things like that. But what's happening nowadays in the world is people are intermarrying. There's a lot of mixing of cultures, and then moving of families to many different parts of the world. Like my family now, we went from California, and now we're living in the Gulf region. So my children are going to grow up with a different experience than what I grew up being in California most of my life. Um, Yeah, I do have some thoughts on this because my children are living the reality of it. My children are half Egyptian, one quarter Pakistani, one quarter Filipino, and we have all kinds of different religious. Some people are strict, some people are very liberal in our family. Some people, my mom's side, are all Catholic. So different religion even. So you have different, even if everyone's Muslim, you still have different people like different interpretations. Some are very, they don't really follow all the rules. Some people are very strict and conservative. So even that you have to negotiate in any family. Um, so I think it's important for the child to have some knowledge of their roots. Where do they come from? Even if it's multiple ones. Each day you can tell them, or each week you can tell them about a different ancestor of theirs or a different person in their family history, so they feel connected to who they are. Understanding your lineage. I mean, if you can know the exact lineage, that's amazing. Like we know the Mendoza family in the Philippines who trace back to Spain. We know it back 13 grandfathers to Spain. So that's nice. I can tell my children that this is where your your Lola's family comes from, your grandma's family. We know that the Zaytun family in Egypt, where my wife's family that they're the direct descendants of Abdul Qadir Zaytun, who's the direct descendant of Sayyidina Ali Zain al-Abidin, and their roots and their family tree. So giving them that knowledge is a useful thing, not for pride or arrogance, but just to know that you are more than just who you are. You came from somewhere else. Like all these people had to survive just to make you alive today. All these generations had to do something and have to have something so that you could be here today. And why is that important? Because in moments of stress, depression, frustration, anxiety, knowing that you're connected to something larger than yourself is a protective factor. That's actually been shown in the research. It's called, they call them like ethnic identity protective factors. Basically, if you're experiencing stress, if you're exposed to trauma, if you have some connection to who you are larger than just yourself, psychologically you do better. Somehow you recover better. You're able to get out of things better. Your mind is able to cope with things better. So it's a good idea to connect the children to as many different cultural lines as they're connected to. And then also connect them to whatever you want their homeland to be, wherever you are, like wherever you're at the moment. My, like we come from a very California identity, and I'm telling my children, you guys are Californian, and like if you want to support, a basketball team, it's either the Lakers or the Golden State Warriors. You don't really have any other choice. There's, some of it is a little bit superficial, but I want them to understand that like I grew up in a certain cultural context, and most likely, and when we move back, inshallah, they'll be in that same cultural context. So to become familiar with it, to take pride in it. Why? So when they get older, they can contribute to it. That you're not just here to just soak it all in and be part of it and be benefiting. No, you have to contribute back to the society that you grew up in. You have to feel connected to it. You're a part of it. What good are you going to put now into the society? So give them that connection. But, now my child is experiencing different things. We've been living in Qatar now, and we went to this soccer game, the Qatar national team, and we're sitting there, and then we stand up because it's the national anthem, and I hear my son, he's only 7, he's like, Qasamun, Qasamun, and he starts singing the national, and I was like, where do you learn this thing? And he's like, I don't know, we sing it in school, because I'm sending him to the Arabic school, so he's singing it once a week in their morning, assembly. So I'm like, okay, so maybe later in life he'll know that a part of his life he was in the Khalij and he knows some of this culture too and he's connected to it. Fine. That'll give him some understanding of who he is when he grows up. So it's the same concept, it's just that it's more varied now because our children are being exposed to so many different things. So what we do not want is for them to feel like they're floating and they have no connection to anything. That's kind of a dangerous thing. Because then you don't feel like you belong, and then when you're struck with some tragedy or something difficult in your life, you don't have much to rely on. You don't have much strength to get from your background because you don't really know who you are. So having a knowledge of who you are is really helpful. And in the Muslim context, I think a knowledge of Arabic, a knowledge of Islam, Islamic history is very important. You don't have to be fluent in Arabic, but you have to have some connection to the religious sources, the source of our religion, the Quran, the text, the hadith, and things like this. So connection to the language, connection to the terms, that's more important, than, memorizing a bunch of religious rules or, things like that. But it's feeling like I can understand this, at some level. I have some connection to it. It has meaning for me in my heart. So for me, like if you don't really know what culture your child is going to identify with, but you do still want them to think of themselves as Muslim first. So then you have to then introduce those things to them when they're young of what it is to be Muslim. And basically that's connection to Allah and the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So they have to have a connection to Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's key. Even if they don't necessarily dress a certain way or, follow a certain cultural aspect, they have to be connected to the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's easier, in my opinion, to connect to the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, than it is to connect to Allah directly, because Allah is a very abstract concept. But the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is another. He grew up, he had a childhood, he had a teenage life, he had a young adult life, he had a whole seerah that we can learn about. And so connecting your child to that story and the stories of all the prophets in general is a great way for them to identify as Muslim in their identity. Brother, you had a question.
Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. My name is Tom from Sydney, Australia. I've got 2 kids, 5, 3, and another one on the way, inshallah. Questions about books. So I fully appreciate the importance of raising children in a household where they're learning their aqidah, they're learning who Allah is, and so on and so forth, to prepare them for later studies. But is there a place for storybooks, fiction, to help them develop their imagination? I grew up, reading Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton and these types of books. And I've started with my eldest son, and he seems to be really engaged, but are there implications to this?
Great question. Yeah, no, I mean, overall, I think exposure to books is very important for the child. And there's some studies that show actually it's just the number of books in the house, correlate to educational achievement in the child and future intellectual skills. And just the number of books in the house, not even saying like what did you do with them, but what that shows is that's a proxy variable. What it means is that like in the house there's an appreciation of this type of knowledge. It's the kids grow up seeing it. Even if they may not read all these books, they know that this is something important, and sometimes they may grab one and read it. My dad had this big bookshelf filled with books, and I think I probably only picked a few out, as I grew up. But every once in a while, I would pick one out, and I would actually be happy that I chose a book and I read it. So I think in general, generally speaking, exposure to books from a young age is always considered favorable. It has a lot of correlations with language development, literacy development, and overall cognitive functioning. Now, the question of storybooks, I think that's very important as well to develop the creative capacity of the child, the ability to imagine, create characters, think about it. So, I off the top of my head, I don't have any objection to storybooks with images and paintings and pictures and things like that. A lot of us grew up with that type of experience. Nice thing now is like, you go to Warda Books or something, you can go and see like great, storybooks now for the new generation of Muslim kids, that I'm actually kind of jealous of the books they have now. They have really nice storybooks, illustrated, talking about, morals and character and theology, even from a child, age-appropriate level to the child. So I'm encouraging of all of those things because, like you said, and for each child, it's a little bit different. And the nice thing about storybooks is they can kind of hone in on what they feel an affinity towards. So some children are very literary and very verbal, and they start to hone in on the words and the sentence structure and the paragraphs and how the flow of the story goes. Other kids are much more visual, and so to see the pictures, they can kind of match the story in their mind to the pictures that they're seeing. And then as they get older, for all the kids, what it does is it develops a normalcy to going straight to a book and reading it for pleasure or for knowledge. So even if they don't initially understand, they're 2-year-old, 3-year-old, when you're reading to them, they are not really getting the information from the book. But what they're learning is, at that moment, it's a great modeling experience for them because you're showing them they're able to create a whole experience in their mind by opening this text, and I remember, in their mind, they're seeing their father or their mother opening this text, and then it suddenly comes out, and then it's a great experience, imaginative. They get older, what it does is it sets up in their brain a habit of turning to books for this type of pleasure or knowledge, So I think that's a great point, and I encourage it.